Sampson. I've seen some of you before, which is great. We are just going to do kind of an intro to Idaho Women's Charitable Foundation grant process. There's a lot of information. If you would do me a favor and definitely ask questions as we go through the process, that would be great. We just did this with some of our nonprofits in rural communities about an hour ago, and it's good. We ended on time, but we were kind of quick. But definitely ask questions, and we will be emailing you a link to the presentation afterwards. So you can take notes if you'd like, but definitely, sorry, I was reading the chat. Definitely, you'll get a copy of it. And I wanted to say, because I was supposed to say this on the last one and I didn't, and now I need to say it now, that we are recording. And this is the Welcome to Grants, September 22nd, 2020, for our general nonprofits. So I'm glad you're here. I'm not great at the Zoom and the computer, so if I have a glitch, just bear with me. You can also use your chat button to ask questions. I've got Jenna at the IWCF offices here with me, and she's kind of helping look through the questions as well. But we have several stopping points. So yeah, let's get rolling. I'm excited. We have a brand new grants session, and I'm just going to kind of get us started if everybody's good with that. I'm actually going to open my Zoom chat this time. I didn't in the last one, so. Let me share my screen. Okay. All right, so here we go. I wanted to just start. So this is Idaho Women's Charitable Foundation. If you're on the wrong call, this is a great time for you to exit, or if you are on the wrong call but you want to stay, feel free. We're a group of women in southwestern Idaho that contribute money for collective giving. And since 2002, we've given back $4.8 million in southwestern Idaho. So pretty good size number. Our goal this year, obviously, is to hit $5 million. So that'll be pretty awesome. I'm Jen Sampson. This is a volunteer job. I'm going to give you my cell phone at the end. You can definitely call me, but I might take a day or two to get back to you. I spent most of my career with Albertsons in Dallas and in San Francisco and here in Boise, and I worked on the public relations side of things, so giving out money to organizations. And when we moved back to Boise about 5 years ago, I got involved with IWCF, and I've just kind of been working on the grants process the last couple of years. So it's really fun to be on the other side of that. So Idaho Women's Charitable Foundation, this is our mission. We look at it every single time we review a grant application, and every time we all get together, we kind of review this. We foster educated philanthropy through collaboration, pooled resources, and individual giving to positively impact our community. This is the root at what we do. These grants and the grants money that we give out to our communities is the most important thing we do. We have over 400 members, I'm going to get into that, and over 80 members participate in the grants process. And we're going to try to get that up to over 90 this year. Okay. So here, IWCF, collective group of individuals. So we have two ways people can be members at IWCF, and I give you this just as some background so that you kind of understand how we get the money that we're going to give away. So members can contribute $1,125, and $500 of that dollars goes into a pooled fund grant, and that's the fund that you all are applying for a grant. And then each member can allocate $500 toward an individual designation. So your child's school, your favorite nonprofit, the college you went to, whatever. And then of the 1,125, 125 goes to administration costs. This year, just in kind of a response to COVID and the changing landscape of nonprofits in our community, we have another membership option where members can contribute $625. So essentially they're just contributing to the pooled fund grant pool. Our whole goal is to make positive change through thoughtful giving. That's what we think about all the time. That's why we have a robust grant application. It's why we read every single application that comes in, because we want to really make sure that we're funding grants and grant proposals that are going to go out and do awesome things in the community, or continue awesome work. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit, what we do. We award the grants. We're looking specifically for projects, programs, services, or items that address demonstrated needs in Southwest Idaho. I'm going to give a couple examples here. These are very limited. We share every single grant recipient that we've ever given money to is on our website, and I'll show you that at the end. But it really is great if you're thinking of a project or a program and you think, oh, maybe I don't know if this would work. Get a cup of coffee, go to our website, and read through some of the projects that we funded. It might give you a little bit of inspiration, or it might give you like a new way to think about the project that you might be applying for. So what we're looking for is like an expansion of a program. And this can be, geographically or demographically. And here's an example. Boise Bike Project came to us last year. They had a very successful project they had been doing at the Women's Correctional Facility, where they had been working with the women there to rebuild and maintain bikes. And essentially they were rolling that exact project out to the Men's Correctional Facility. Thought it was a great fit, expanded the demographics of the program. So that's kind of an example of an expansion with new users. Last year, we also had Idaho Association for the Education of Young Children. They have a Ready for Kindergarten program. They've piloted it. They've rolled it out. And now, last year they rolled it out to 5 new areas. So that's an example of expanding a program, geographically. We're also looking for, critical need in the community. A good example of this is several years ago, Sweet Syringa Hall. It's a community center in Sweet, Idaho. Had some damage because of weather, applied for a grant for some facility upgrades, obviously took care of that need. Desert Sage Health Centers in Mountain Home, applied for a grant, demonstrated that they needed help getting patients from Mountain Home to Boise for critical medical services. And so, IWCF funded a van to transport the patients back and forth. I think there's been a big myth sometimes amongst our members and our nonprofits that IWCF doesn't fund operational expenses, but we do. We just ask that they be related to a program. So a good example of this is the Idaho Refugee Center created a speakers bureau a couple years ago, and the grant money paid for the salary of the program coordinator. Same with Leap Charities last year in their grant, some of the grant money paid for postage and translators, and something that we may consider an operational expense, but in the reality, it's directly related to the program or the project which they're applying. This year, we're also looking if your nonprofit is needing to react to COVID. And whatever that looks like for you, if you're reestablishing a program that maybe didn't get funded, maybe you had a greater need than you thought you might, we're definitely looking for those stories as well. So let's just talk demographics and geographies. In 2020, we fund in 6 interest areas, and all the grants that we give out will be between $20,000 and $30,000. And I usually do this little talk in a room full of people, and I say, so if you apply for a grant for $19,500, will we accept that? And we'll accept it, but we won't fund it because it's not between $20,000 and $30,000. So, we just ask that you keep your dollars in our funding levels. We fund in cultural arts, education, environment, financial stability, health, and rural communities. Those are our interest areas. All the definitions are in the grant application instructions that are on our website. You can use the funding over 1 or 2 years. However, we ask that you spend the money in the year that it's awarded. So if you receive the check in December, we ask that you spend the money. The grants are awarded in May, so we ask that you spend it, within May to May. So We fund in 11 counties: Ada, Adams, Boise, Camas, Canyon, Elmore, Gem, Owyhee, Payette Valley, and Washington County. We added Camas County this year, so it'll be our first year there. And this is a question we get. Okay, what if my organization is providing services in 4 counties that are covered by IWCF and 1 that isn't? Can I still apply? Well, absolutely. I mean, our goal, though, is we'd like to see, 90% of your funding go to the counties we fund. But we don't want you not to apply because you're going to spend a little time outside of the funding area. Where this comes up is, in a lot of cases, is, oh, I'm applying for a traveling X, and I'm going to go to all these cities, and then I'm going to hit Jerome too. Well, Jerome's not in our funding area, but all the cities around it are. So, we're just asking you to think through that as you apply. I know that most of you probably aren't. I have a list, but I printed it. And of course, I printed it in that super small font. So I can't actually read it without my reading glasses, which you can't find. So I know all of you are not in rural communities, but in case you are, or in case you service areas in a rural community, it's defined as a town, unincorporated area with populations under 30,000. Question we get, well, what if I'm based in Boise or I'm based in Nampa, but my services go to rural and non-rural communities? That's totally fine. We'd love for you to apply. You'd be eligible for a rural communities grant, but the services covered by the grant must be delivered exclusively in rural areas. And the intent of our rural community grant is to provide funding for areas that normally wouldn't have all of the access, to donors and to resources like you would in a Nampa or a Meridian or a Boise, where you just have the population, with more population equals sometimes more resources. So let's talk last year. Last year we received 59 grants. We sent 40 to our committees, and I'm going to kind of talk a little bit more in the presentation about why some grants don't make it to a committee. But really our goal is to get every single grant we receive. We want it to be complete, on time, in the right funding area, right geographics, and we want to send 100% to our committee. Here's kind of our breakdown in our interest areas. You can see that environment with 4. It always comes in low. And so I encourage you, if you're on this call and you have a project that would fit in our environment category, that we would love it. We know there's so many worthy projects out there and so many good nonprofits doing work in that area. But for some reason, we just, we're not seeing quite as many. So the big question I get often is, well, what category should we apply? Because say, for example, you are doing health screenings, but you're doing them in all the schools and you're educating people as you do them, and you're doing them in Emmett. So really you could apply in education, health, and rural communities. And this is just kind of a snapshot over the last 3 years. We added the Rural Communities Grant 2 years ago. And I just went back 3 years because we kind of changed our process in 2018 to simplify it. But you can see, you can kind of see the distribution. In 2019, we did a big push with our rural communities, encouraging those nonprofits to apply, which they did, kind of a big spike. But, this might help you if you're kind of weighing in between 2 areas to apply. This might help you make that decision. And like I said, we'll email a link to all of these slides after the presentation. So I'm going to stop the share. Any questions at this point? And you can put them in the chat or you can unmute. None? You guys are like much less questioning than my rural communities group. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna give you one more second. No, all right. So I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen, which doesn't always go that smooth. Okay. Okay, so this is how do you know if you can even apply? Your organization must be 501c3, educational institution, government agency, or a tax-exempt religious entity. And I'm going to stop there because I'm missing a fourth arrow, and I've got to look up the correct wording for it. But there's a group that's like a medical, like if you are a hospital or you're providing medical care, and I'll enter that in as well. Those categories are what IWCF has said we will fund, and that's, so your organization has to fall under one of those groups. We do have some financial requirements for applying for a grant. We've simplified it this year because we're trying to make it easier for our nonprofits to apply for grants. We're trying to help nonprofits that may not be as established as others. But before I talk about the financial requirements, I want to just talk about the reason we even ask. And the reason is we're trying to just figure out if the organizations that are applying for a grant from us are financially sustainable. We want to make sure that, your executive director is not vacationing in Hawaii on your organization's dime 4 times a year. We want to make sure that the money that you are taking in is being spent in an ethical way. We look to make sure that everything balances and that there aren't any mathematical discrepancies. And so what we're asking for is we ask you to have 1 year of audited financials or a copy of your 990. And for those of you that don't know, a 990 is, it's intended to provide the government and interested members of the public with a snapshot of your organization's activities for the year. It's an organization that normally has $50,000 or more in gross receipts and is required to file an exempt organization return with the IRS, must file either a 990 or a Form 990 Easy. And so we like to see a copy of that if you have it. This is one of the biggest pitfalls of our grant application process is many of our organizations just submit the 990 postcard that they get back in the mail. It's great that you got the postcard, but it doesn't really help us know if your organization is financially stable. And that's really what we're looking for in this financial requirements piece. So no, you can't just turn in a copy of the postcard. If you have questions on this, I'll give you my cell at the end. We definitely want to talk with you. Also around the financial requirements, we really like to see your local chapter, your local group, if you're part of a national group. If you don't have local audited financials and all you have is national, it helps us if you can explain to us what's going on with your money. It helps us as we evaluate the grant, and it helps give us just a little bit of sense of security that we know that your spending and your financials are where you say that they are. So things that IWCF doesn't fund. I'm just going to kind of run through this list, and then we'll kind of stop for questions if anyone has any on the financials. We don't fund endowment or scholarship funds. We don't fund fundraising or annual funds. We don't fund individuals. No incomplete or late applications. We don't fund any requests designed to influence government. So lobbying is out. We don't fund anything that requires participation or membership in a faith-based organization. But if you are a faith-based organization that is a nonprofit and you provide services to clients, that's great. We just ask that you can't discriminate and make somebody join in order to receive your services. Undesignated capital campaign contributions or applications from an organization that's already in our grant cycle. So I see I had a question come up, I think. Um, so this is a great question. If we haven't been auditing due to COVID, can we submit last year's audits and then a current audit? That would be fine. Nisa, thank you for asking. I would like you to, if you're going to do that, just explain it to us. Please just put like a sentence, put an asterisk, just tell us why, so that when we're reviewing the grant, we can kind of see, what your thought process is behind it and how you're and why you're doing that. This is, I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just money. Maybe it's just, we're talking about money, but this seems to be the hardest thing for our nonprofits, is to just tell us. We would prefer that you be honest with us about what's going on your balance sheet, so that we know. Here's another example. You're a small chapter with a national organization, but your national organization budget is huge, but your small chapter budget isn't. This is a great time for you to explain to us why is that. Help us understand why we should give you, a grant. So questions on finances, on what we can fund, nonprofit eligibility. Let's see, if we submit a 990 easy, are you looking for an income statement? Yes. Yes, Lori. We're looking for an income statement and a balance sheet. So, other questions on this part? So I'm going to show you later how many of our applications kind of don't make it to the committee. And this right here is one of the biggest reasons why. This and proofreading. And I can't help you with proofreading, but I can answer all of your questions on this part. So make sure, even if you're in the middle of the application, if you run into a bind or you have a question, this is not like the end of our conversation. And we'd love for you to call us and we can help walk you through what you may or may not need. So, okay, I'm going to go back to the share screen. There's a little delay, so I'd say talk amongst yourselves, but I know that's not happening. Okay, let's see. Okay, so hi, Emily. I see your question. Educational institution building a new branch. If we're thinking of asking for funding for accessibility measures installed in the building, can we include that under health? Yes, absolutely you can. So we'll talk a little bit later about, yes, you can include that under health. What you can't do is apply for the same grant in both health and education. So you kind of have to choose. We make our nonprofits do the heavy lifting on that part. You have to tell us which category you'd like us to consider your proposal under. Did I answer your question, Emily? You can just do a yes in the chat, and if not, I'll try to do a little bit better. Okay, great. All right, so here's what we're really looking for. Grant requests that are addressing a critical need. And, let me give you, I said earlier we're a collective giving group. So we have 404 members. I believe they range in age from, I might get the lower end wrong, of 14 up to, I think, pretty close to 100. Lots of in between. So when you're, we all know different critical needs, but in your grant request, we need you to tell us, we need you to explain it to us, just in case maybe we're not as familiar with it. We've had our eyes opened many, many times as we're reading through grant proposals. We maybe realize a need that we didn't even know existed, or that wasn't as critical as we thought. And so we are looking to you to tell us that story. We're also looking for you to tell us, okay, once we give you the money, how are you going to keep it going? So a plan for sustainability. And one thing that IWCF does like is we like to contribute a substantial portion of the funding to the project. So taking the question I just got, if you're asking to build accessibility ramps and the project is going to cost, $40,000 and you're asking for a grant of 30, that's funding 75% of the project. That's a pretty good number. If the project costs 100,000 and you're asking for 20, IWCF would be funding 20%, which you could definitely still apply, but we may look at that grant where we get to fund the whole project and we might say, oh, this might be a better fit for us. So just something to keep in mind as you're writing and thinking through your grant proposal. So here's what we want you to tell us. We want to know the story. Like, how did this program come about? How did this project start? Have you done your research? Who are you going to serve? Who are you collaborating with in the community? Tell us about your organization. This is your time to let us know your history, your leadership, your expertise in this area. And, our members, I think every year we get all the grant proposals in, and every single year, every person, so over 80 people, there's at least one or two organizations that nobody's ever heard about. And so when that happens, it's pretty educational for us, but it really puts kind of the burden on you to tell us about yourself. Like, educate us, make us, help us learn more about what you do and when you're doing it. As you talk to us about critical need, we want to hear the anecdotes, we want to hear the story, but we also really want the data. We want you to tell us there's 90% of kids in the Melba School District, they don't get lunch. Or 80% of families in Emmett are struggling to get their kids ready for kindergarten, or whatever that data might look like. That's what helps us evaluate your grant proposal. Explaining also who are you as an organization working with to meet this critical need. And is your group doing something different than other groups? Are you working in conjunction with other groups? Both answers are totally fine. We just want to know. We also want to know, hey, are you bringing something really cool you saw in Portland or Salt Lake up to Boise? Is it a tested model and you want to try it here? Or have you tried something and it's just been amazing and you want to expand it? Tell us all of that too. Just the more you can tell us your story, both your organization story and the story behind your project, that it will help us as we evaluate your grant proposal. So you ask, well, this is all great, Jen, but how do I tell this story? Well, you tell it through goals, which is your big picture, your objectives, which you can measure, and through how your evaluation, which is going to tell us how you met your objectives. And I want to just take a minute and kind of walk through this for you experienced grant writers out there. This is probably, you've seen this before and this makes sense, but I don't know, for me, it's always kind of a good reminder. So, a goal is far reaching. It's your big picture. The goal is no child will ever suffer from polio. Your objective, however, is really drilled down. So 90% of the children entering first grade in West Ada will be fully immunized against polio by a target date. Here's another goal. All children will learn to read and write in elementary school. Well, that is a fantastic goal and would probably take all the money of every organization giving money to make that happen. However, your targeted project maybe can reach at least 80% of Melba third graders who will pass the state reading test by May of 2019. So you kind of see how the goal is far reaching, and then the objective is really drilled down to what it is your program or project are actually going to do. And then we want you to say, okay, so now I've got my goal, I've got some objectives, because a goal can have more than one objective. How are you going to measure this? Are you going to survey it? Are you going to go door to door? Are you going to look at state data? And then you're going to tell us, when's this even going to happen? Are you looking out, 2022, 2030, whatever that might look like. So we're looking for you to kind of, as you're formulating your project request, say, okay, can I even get this done in 1 or 2 years? Because that's the time period I'm applying for the grant. So, as you're thinking this through, think about, okay, I need a target deadline that is going to be within the time I'm going to get this money. So here's how you kind of put it together, right? All kids will learn to read and write in elementary school. Okay, we're going to focus it down to 80% of Melba third graders will pass the state reading test. And here's our evaluation. So we're going to measure that against the Idaho reading indicator. So the 80% of the Melba kids have got to get a 70 on the reading indicator. We're going to target these 80% of third graders. which you could even put in, you probably already know how many third graders there are, so you could put in, and that's 50 kids. And we're going to have this completed by May of 2018. That gives our committee that's reading your grant some pretty substantial information to know, okay, here's their goal, here's what they're going to do, here's how they're going to do it, and here's how they're going to measure it. And I will tell you, when we're looking at grants, that it gives us more security that, oh, you know what, this nonprofit's done the research, so they know what they're doing. So let's talk about budgets. I may have some groups on here that have a local, that are part of a national organization, and submitting your national budget is great. However, we also like to see how you're doing locally. And it doesn't have to be fancy, and it doesn't have to be really elaborate, but we need to see your budget for your local chapter. We would prefer that, because again, this goes back to the talk on financials, right? We're trying to see, okay, are you going to be around for another couple years to be able to sustain this grant? Do you have the resources in your organization to execute this grant? Those are some of the things like our committee is looking for. We'll also get down as we talk about organization budget versus your project budget. And your organization budget is really the local budget. A project budget is, okay, so what am I going to go spend on this project? So take the YMCA, for example, right? They have a big organizational budget, but maybe their project budget is specifically focused on a playground at the downtown Y that we're going to install new slides and outside equipment for kids on. That's the project budget. That's what we want to see. Where is our money going to be spent? And of that budget, where's all the money going? So much to slides, so much to the jungle gym, so much to the program coordinator, whatever that looks like. So as you think through budgets, really stop yourself and think, am I giving IWCF information that they can really work with and that will help them understand the picture of my organization? Well, to make this easy for you, we've given you a template. So hopefully for your project budget, it'll make it really simple. We'll give you a template. You can just plug it in. Just some tips, know your numbers. We want to see the expenses. The biggest thing is just explain things that might be misunderstood. It is always better to put an asterisk and tell us why something just doesn't look quite right. Or maybe something that if you look at it, you think, oh, I bet they're going to ask me a question on this. Or if I was on the other side, I might ask a question. Just explain it. 2020 has been a crazy year. COVID's been a crazy time. There might be some accounting things. I don't even know, but just, it's always better to err on the side of just explaining this piece to us. And then check your math. We have a business and finance committee that reads every grant, and they're all wonderful, wonderful women who are extremely smart in the areas of accounting, and they're going to balance every one of your budgets. And so it's always better if you can do it first, so that it makes it easier on them. And then you might ask yourself, well, I'm applying in December for a May grant. What if I estimate things wrong? You might. What we're asking you to just do the best that you can do. One thing I will say is we've had organizations that grossly underestimate. Maybe you think, oh, they'll look at this a little bit, more favorable. But last year we had a group that applied and they were trying to buy a car, and everyone on our committee knew that there's no way you could go out and buy a car for that amount of money, right? So just the best thing to do is just be truthful in the numbers. We can help you, when you get your money in May, if there's a little bit of a, if it has to shift, it has to shift. And we did that a little bit this year. We've done it in our whole history. We had a group that received money and then the estimate went way down, right? And so then they're like, what do we do? And so our whole objective is to work with you to make sure that this isn't hard. It shouldn't be complicated. We just want to make sure that, on paper and financially, you are who you say you are. And that's our biggest goal. So, as we talk about the grant application, I can't encourage you enough just to proofread. I talked about, a lot of reasons the applications don't make it to the committee are because of the financial, because the budget's being submitted, or the right information's not submitted. So the other main reason that they don't make it to committee is because whoever was writing the grant didn't follow the instructions. So if the dollar amount is between $20,000 and $30,000, well, guess what? You need to apply for $20,000 to $30,000, not $19,500 or $31,500. And I know you're all, I can't see you because I can see my PowerPoint, but I know you're laughing at me and thinking, oh my God, Jen, that never happens. So actually it does. Last year, 4 times. But that's why it's so important to just read the instructions. One of the things I just, write to your audience, like I was mentioning before, there's a wide range of people that'll be reading your grant, all different backgrounds, all different professions, all different ages. It's probably better to write so that every man can read it and understand what you're trying to do. Proofread, and then, I'll talk about in the timeline, the way that our grant process works is, at the end of the day, all of our collective 400 and some members vote to see who will get a grant, and it goes to a ballot. And so if you don't succeed, please definitely reapply. We've also had groups in years that apply and they just needed one more year maybe to do some some research, or once they're through the process, they realize they as an organization can't make that grant work. So just, as you're thinking about this, and if you have applied with us before, because I see a few of you out there, it doesn't mean that it wasn't awesome. It just means it wasn't awesome enough in that one year at that one time. So, we're pretty proud of all of our applicants, and we're really proud of all the projects that they're doing. But, the reality is we can only give 6 grants. And so, it definitely is important to just follow the process if you can. So here, let's talk about accuracy, or why I should proofread. We're doing better, but this is the number of applications received, and this is the percent that, goes to the committee. So last year we had 68% of our applications made it to the committee, which is great. The year before we had 63, before that 55. Our goal is 100%. I would like to see every application that comes in be able to move on to the committee to review. As you're writing the grant request, being persuasive, just make sure you give us all the details. Think and write like a journalist. We want to hear about how this is going to make us cry, because we probably will, but we need you to convince our brain. And so, as much data as you can put in, measurable objectives are very important, target dates. How is this really going to make an impact both in our hearts, but also how are you going to be able to measure it and show us? So right now I am going to stop the share and ask, any questions on the grant application process. Let's see. I think I got all of them out of the chat. Any other questions on this part? No? You guys all seasoned. You've done this. You know what you're doing, right? I see Scott Jones out there. Hi, Scott. Scott with the Phoenix has applied several times, and he was a finalist last year. So if anyone is feeling down about applying, call Scott and give you some advice. But I think, it's worth it. And the residual of applying for a grant, the best part is, that at least 10 to 15 other people are going to read it. And so you never know who might read your grant, might feel like a personal connection and say, oh, you know what, I'm going to give my individual fund next year. I'm just going to send a check. I can't tell you how many site visits I've gone on and just written a check to the group afterwards, even though I knew they probably weren't going to get a grant. So, I guess if you can think positive and be optimistic, that might be another way to think about this whole process, is you might even just be getting more people interested in your organization. So I just encourage you on the budget and finances, if you have any questions at all, I'll give you my cell at the end. Please call. And if you are having trouble with your goals and objectives, or you're having trouble just writing the grant, we can't do it for you, because that would be weird and, be a conflict of interest. But, we have a lot of members in IWCF that are grant writers or have been grant writers, and would be more than happy to talk with you and think through some of that process with you to make sure that, you're kind of on the right track, especially if you're new to this. So, all right, I'm going to just keep moving on, because I want to stay true to our time here. This share thing is cray to me. Okay. You present. Okay, so let's talk timeline. So the application is live. It's a little bit new format this year, which is good. So what happens is on December 15th, it's due. We're going to look at it. Is it complete? Is it on time? Are the correct attachments uploaded? So I've got, I think Joe was on our call this morning, but I've got Jenna on the call with me. There's two fantastic women that work at our office, and they can help you if you have any kind of technical difficulties. However, it is so much easier for them to help you if it is not 11 o'clock in the morning on December 15th and the application is due at noon. So if I could encourage anyone to do anything, that is to get it done early. And then if you have trouble, or you're having trouble uploading stuff, we can help you with that, and we can help solve the problems around that. We had some technical glitches last year, but I think we've worked through some fixes on that. But if I could encourage you to do anything, just even a couple days early would be great. So what happens is all of your applications come in, and then over Christmas and the first part of January, we have two committees that read every single application. The first committee is kind of a steering committee, and what they'll do is they'll just go in and look at, this was in the wrong county. They didn't apply for money within our grant parameters. They're missing documents. So I call it kind of our proofread side. And at that point we say, you know what, we can't move this grant request onto the committee. And then we have this group of 7 to 8 very talented, very smart women who have a business and finance background. And we call them the Business and Finance Committee, obviously. And they're actually gonna look at every single grant, and they're gonna look at every single one of your financial documents. So they're looking for whole organization sustainability, project sustainability. They're gonna double check your current tax status. They're gonna look at your budgets. They're gonna tally the math on your budgets. But essentially what they're doing is they're saying, okay, we think if IWCF gives money to this organization, that they are going to be around to fund it, that they're going to be able to sustain the project, that they're allocating their resources wisely, meaning, their executive director is not living in Hawaii 6 months out of the year on the nonprofit's dime. And so they're going to kind of look through all of those components of your application. And then they give the rest of our members like a report out, and they say, okay, I'm going to use the Y as an example. Here's the YMCA, great sustainability, their budget looks great, everything adds up, they've got their audited financials or their 990 turned in. And so they're going to kind of help us, give us a sense of the health of your organization. Because as you know, I said, we have over 80 people that read all these grants, and not all of us have a strong business and accounting background. So we rely on our experts in that area to kind of weed through the numbers for us. So once your numbers have all been looked at, then your application is passed over to our interest area committees. And it can vary, but there's usually like 10 to 15 people on assigned to each interest area. So what that means is 10 to 15 people are going to read all of the grants like in the cultural arts interest area. So at this point, this is where your grant application is kind of up against all the other ones in that group. They're going to look at, critical need, feasibility, project execution. They're going to look at your grant proposal based on our mission. They're going to do their own research. And then they're just going to talk it through. And, it's a very, the interest area committees start with a scored evaluation, but a lot of their conversation is based around, what do we think of this project? Do they say do we think they can do what they say they're going to do? What's their history? How strong is their leadership? Who's going to execute this? Do they have the right person in place? So they're going to look at all of those pieces. And then they're going to narrow down from their committee, they're going to narrow down their applications to 3 to 4. And those 3 to 4, applications will have a site visit. Those nonprofits will have a site visit. And this is, we did a survey with all of our members on our grants committee last year, and this is their favorite part, this whole thing. And I get it, it's my favorite part too. So this is the part where if your organization is selected as a site visit, our members from IWCF, 4 or 5 of them, come out and they meet you. They might meet some of your clients. They might walk around your facility, but it's really a chance for you to tell us your story in person. And this is also a chance for our committee to say, hey, something didn't make sense to me on this application. Can you explain it a little more? Or we need a little more detail about this combine you're going to buy, or, whatever it might look like. So in February, in the middle of winter, we do these site visits, and inevitably there's always a few up to Valley and Adams County, and that's always a little sketchy, but, knock on wood, this will be smooth sailing year. But this is kind of where these committees take the 3 or 4 finalists, visit, talk to the executive directors, talk to the people who are going to execute the grant, get more detail, and then the committee will come back and narrow it down to 2 grants. And those 2 grant applications will go to the ballot. So if you take 2 grants times 6 interest areas, that's 12 organizations go on the ballot. Because remember, we have 400 and some members. So we say to our members, you give us your money, we're going to vet all these organizations, we're going to do all the due diligence, we're going to look at all their finances, we're going to look at all their projects, and then we're going to present to you the absolute 2 best this year in this category, and we're going to ask you to vote. And so the grants committee holds a couple of member Q&A sessions where we ask questions, we talk through the site visits, we give more information about the project, and then in April, our membership at large votes. And for a collective giving organization, we have a really high voting percentage. I think last year it was 98% of our members vote, and that means they read what you wrote on the application, and they vote for one or the other grant recipient. And then in May, our grants are awarded. So any question, I'm not going to turn the share screen off, but does anyone have any questions about the timeline? Let's see. Okay, Susie, hi Susie. How soon can the applications be turned in? They can be turned in anytime. I mean, we take them all the way up until the due date. So now that it's live, it can be, I see that Jenna answered that too. Thanks, Jenna. Any other questions? You can unmute too if that's easier. Okay. All right, well, I'm going to move on, talk a little bit. I'm going to show you a couple. You guys are really testing my screen sharing here. So new in 2021. IWCF and Jenna and Joe in our office have been working tirelessly the last 12 months really to try to figure out a better way to have our nonprofits submit an application. And we looked at several different software solutions for that that were affordable. And we selected SlideRoom. It's an integrated software, so both our members can use it, and then hopefully it'll be easier for our nonprofits to submit an application. you can, once you create an account, the beauty of it is when you come back to submit one next year, in a couple of years, your account will still be there, so your information will be saved. We've simplified our application, so we have less attachments this year. We've gone from 2 years audited financials to 1 year. And we've also given you some space at the end in different ways to tell us your story. So instead of just the normal upload, you can add in links. You can just, you can essentially add more extra material as opposed to, a copy of your IRS letter. Validating that you're a 501c3. Some of those things are still in there, but it's just a click and you're able to validate it through an internet link. So I'm going to show you slide room here in a second, but Pat, can an organization submit grants for 2 separate projects in different categories? So the answer is yes, you definitely can. If you submit a grant request in 2 separate categories, you have to pick the categories and it cannot be the same project. But I will tell you this, when we get to the site visit, you can go to the site visit for both projects, but when it comes to the ballot, we won't put your organization in 2 different categories on the ballot. Does that answer? I don't know who's Pat, but does that answer your question, Pat? If not, will you say something? Okay, I'm going to just say that it did. Okay, any questions so far? Okay, yes, good. Okay, so I want to show you a couple things. Back to the share screen, you know how I love this. Okay. All right, so if you haven't been here, this is the IWCF website, and I would encourage you to go here now. You can go to grants. You can go right here where it says how-tos of the application process, and guess what? We give you, you'll see the slides from today will be right here. You'll see the application instructions. You'll see tips and overview for the application. Guess what? We even give you a template for your goals and objectives. We give you a template for your budget. We give you a template if you just want to type out your whole application in Word first and then cut and paste it. We're trying to give you as many tools to help you through this process as we can. I think the most important part here, though, if you go to grants recipients, this will walk through every single grant that we've ever granted as an organization. So you can even go back 2018 and you can read about all of the grant proposals. So if you're thinking to yourself, kind of like I mentioned in the beginning, right? If you're thinking, I'm not sure if this will work, or I'm looking for something different, or, I don't know if this is something they might think about funding, go back through and just kind of read through, or maybe you even just need an idea, or you need just a kickstart to brainstorm. This would be a great spot. You can also search, if you want, by it's on the back page. You can search by interest area too. So if you're looking for all of the grants that were in cultural arts, you can, search by category. Let's see. And then here's just more information about our criteria. Here's the definitions of our interest areas. The one thing I do want to tell you is if you see something on our website, it's true. For the most part, like, if we fund these counties and you don't see Twin Falls County on there, guess what? We don't fund Twin Falls County. And if you even have any bit of a question, please just ask. We're more than happy to help you navigate this process. So if you're, this is kind of, I wanted to show you really quick what slide room looks like. This is my organization, Dog Lovers Unite. The beauty of this platform is when you get to the bottom of your page, it will automatically save. So if you're working through this and you need to take a break or you need to work on something else, you can just save the information and move on to it later. you can also kind of jump around in the actual, grant application itself. You know how I told you earlier about proofreading and the incomplete applications were kind of a problem? So guess what? We have all these asterisks. So as long as you answer the question in the box, your application's not going to be incomplete. And as long as you, upload the attachments, you're going to be in good shape. So I encourage everyone just to use the new software. We can help walk through it, but it seems we've had lots of user testing, and it feels like it's just going to be much smoother than maybe our last couple of years. So it's taken us a while to get here, and we're really glad that we are here. But this is our inaugural year, so we may have a few blips. But other than that, I know I went through it quick because I like a quick meeting. I mean, an hour's not really quick, but you know what I'm saying. So if you have any questions, what can I answer for you? Are you guys all pros? You know what you're doing? Okay, I'll just give you some. Is it okay to call a previous grant recipient and ask them for advice? I would say yes, especially if you know them. You can call me. I'm going to give you my cell phone right now if you want to write it down. It's area code 817-239-0767. You can call me anytime. It may take a while to get back to you, but I'll try not to. But especially if you have any questions about the general grants process, you can also email. There's a link right there at the application site that you can email me. Yes, Todd, I can repeat that number, 817-239-0767. Put it in the chat. But I think, IWCF, our entire goal is we want to give money away in southwestern Idaho. And so in order to do that, we need to hear about all the awesome projects and programs that you're working on. And so we don't want the grant application to be overwhelming. We don't want it to be intimidating. We want it to be easy. Now, we want to give money away to organizations we know are stable and that can spend it and that are thoughtful and resourceful in their operations. But, I looked at the list of all of you and I think you all qualify for that. So, we want to be a resource to help you to do an application, to maybe receive a grant from us. What other questions? So after the Zoom call, I'm going to, or Jenna at our office is going to send all of you an email. I'll have a link to the slides. So if you want to go back through and look at them, I encourage you to check out our website. Like I said, the grants application is due mid-December, but I would do a personal goal like before Thanksgiving would be good. And I'm looking at some of you, and I know you'll be the ones that are like December 14th at midnight that are like having trouble, but I'll peg you. So what else? Any other questions? No, your quiet group. My rural communities group was not quiet. So maybe because you're urban, you already have all the answers. I don't know.
Maybe it's just because this has been such a great presentation.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
I was one of those people at the last minute last year for my first time, and I wish I had all of this information up front.
Okay.
We're doing better. I did a lot of research on your website, but this is so helpful.
Good. Thanks, Susie. Great. Appreciate all the comments. And with that, it's 12:30. So, Marla, do you have a question?
I don't really understand the business about the money having to be used in the first year, and yet on one of the grants that you pulled up, it said that was over a 2-year period.
Sure. Yeah, I'm sorry. I kind of went through that pretty quickly. So you can apply for a grant. I'm just going to do it in examples. So if your grant is $30,000, you can have it span 2 years, or you can have it span 1 year. You just have to tell us. So say you want to do some structural improvements to a building, and you're going to be able to get it all done in 6 months. You might request a grant for $30,000 in 1 year. And if you do, then we would just ask that you spend that $30,000 in that year.
Okay.
But say you think, oh, it's going to take us 24 months to get this done. You can request a grant spanning 2 years, and then we will pay out the money. It's not always half and half, but you'll tell us, you'll say, you know what, I need 22,000 the first year, 8,000 the second year.
Okay.
We just ask, when we give you the money, we ask that you be ready to spend it.
That's clear. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Great. Oh God, I got a lot of chats. Let's see, Star. Okay, I represent a private school that pulls from many rural but also urban areas. Would we fit in the rural concept category? I think the best way to answer this would be, if the school is physically located in a rural community, you would fall in the rural concept category. But if it's not in a rural community, then I would probably apply in a different category. And I know there's going to be some of you that call me afterwards and you say to me, which category should I apply? But you know I can't answer that, right? I'm just going to send you back my chart, okay? Okay. All right, what else? Anything else before we all go? All right. Thank you. Watch for an email with the link. Call me, email me. If you have technical problems, definitely reach out to Joe and Jen at our office. Their number's all over our website.